Since Saturday, without further ado, the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
This is very exciting for us.
Exciting for me.
You said today, and I know that you have a lot of power, but I can't imagine you manufactured the breaking news about the court. You said this court is not normal. What did you mean?
What I meant by that is it's done more to unravel basic rights and basic decisions than any court in recent history. And that's what I meant by not normal. It's gone out of its way to, I mean, for example, take a look at overruling Roe v. Wade. Take a look at what the decision today. Take a look at how it's ruled on a number of issues that have been precedent for 50, 60 years sometimes. And that's what I meant by not normal.
Can I read you some of your appointees'
Yes.
dissent? Because I think it'll be in the history books along with this decision. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson said in part, quote, "With let them eat cake obliviousness today, the majority pulls the ripcord and announces color blindness for all by legal fiat. But deeming race irrelevant in law does not make it so in life." It's so simple. But
right.
So right. How did the six get it so wrong?
Well, look, remember the Federalist Society when you were in another administration?
In another party, yes.
Well, I didn't mean it that way.
It's okay.
But the Federalist Society had a very, very strict construction of the Constitution. Yeah. And if it didn't, they used the word, it didn't exist. But this administration, this court has gone beyond that, and I just find it, I don't know how to express it, find it just so out of sorts with the basic value system of the American people, and I think that across the board, the vast majority of the American people don't agree with a lot of the decisions this court is making.
I mean, I think some of your former Senate colleagues on the Judiciary Committee would go as far as to say that it's anti-democratic. Do you agree with that?
Well, if I say it's anti-democratic, then it gets
in a lot of trouble.
No, but it is. Its value system is different, and its respect for institutions is different, and in that sense, it is not as embracing of all. What I think the Constitution says, we hold these truths to be self. All men and women are created equal, endowed by their Creator. It's a uniqueness of America. We never fully lived up to it. We never walked away from it. And this court seems to say that, no, that's not always the case. The idea there's no right of privacy in the Constitution, giving states power that we fought a war over in 1860. I just think it's... This is not your father's Republican Party.
Well, and to that point, Roe and Casey are decided with justices appointed by Democrats and Republicans.
Yes.
And these opinions that land outside the range of public opinion in our country are super conservative majority decisions. They're 6-3 on Dobbs. They're 6-3 on affirmative action. Does it require, does your love and reverence for our institutions make you do a hard thing and look at shaking up the institutions? Will you look at court reform again?
Well, I did look at here's two things. Before I got elected, while I put together a group of constitutional scholars to try to expand the court, which I think is a mistake. After all, the judgment was that doesn't make sense because it can become so politicized in the future. But so what I've done is in my appointments, I've appointed 136 judges and found ourselves in a situation where I've picked people who are from various backgrounds. We've appointed more women to the appellate courts, black women to the appellate courts than every other president in American history. Not just Ketanji Brown, but more than any across the board. We've also, I wanted to make sure that we had on the court, and Republicans have been appointed to the court by us as well. On the court, want to have public defenders, people who've been on the other side of the equation, so that everyone is represented. There's a point of view to be able to be made, but there's I have no hard test to say you must have this view. I never ask a nominee what's their position on A, B, C, or D.
No litmus test.
No litmus test.
Do you worry that without court reform, this conservative majority is too young and too conservative, that they might do too much harm?
Well, I think they may do too much harm. But I think if we start the process of trying to expand the court, we're going to politicize it maybe forever in a way that is not healthy.
That you can't get back.
That you can't get back. And I think, look, I think maybe it's just the optimist in me. I think that some of the court are beginning to realize their legitimacy is being questioned in ways that hadn't been questioned in the past. And I think there's a concern on some, maybe even the Chief Justice, that maybe we better.
Well, in the independent legislature's decision, it looks like maybe Roberts had that in mind.
I don't know that.
I don't either. But you could, the optimist could hope so, right?
Hope so.
Let me ask you about an institution that we spend a lot of time covering here, and that's the Justice Department. The Washington Post recently reported that it took the Justice Department seeing Cassidy Hutchinson's public testimony, which was a year ago yesterday, to really focus on Trump and his innermost circle's role in the January 6th coup plot. You've awarded medals to Harry Dunn and Officer Fanone and the others. Do they deserve to know why it took the Justice Department a year to open an investigation into the person that incited the insurrection?
Look, I made a commitment that I would not in any way interfere with the Justice Department, who they prosecuted, if they prosecuted, how they proceeded. I've not spoken once, not one single time with the Attorney General on any specific case, not once. But I do talk to him about law enforcement and all those other things. But the point is that I just think there's what I mean about interfering in institutions. The last administration tried to direct the court, tried to push the court. I mean, whether it was the Fed or the court or institutions that were supposed to say hands off. Mm-hmm. So I've never engaged in that. It's not my role to do that.
But when you talk about strengthening democracies at home and abroad, do other Democratic leaders want to know why the foot soldiers of the insurrection have been charged and prosecuted, but not the leader?
Well, the answer is yes. But here's my answer. I have faith the Justice Department will move in a direction that is consistent with the law. And so it may take time, but I have faith that they're going to do the right. But I've not spoken about it, and I don't think I should.
And I think that, again, is sort of this reverence for the institutions and the norms. And I guess the bet is that the public will see the difference between you and should you run against Donald Trump again. Actually, not even just Donald Trump. Ron DeSantis wants to completely direct investigations. Do you think that your next message to the country, the contrast is even sharper than the soul of the nation? You've got the other party openly running on politicizing the rule of law.
Well, the answer is I think it's going to be a major issue. You may remember, I know you remember because you've spoken about it. When I ran for 2020, I made a speech on the threat to democracy, and I made it in Philadelphia at Independence Hall. And a lot of the press said, what's he talking about this for? Not just the press, others. Why is he talking about this?
It's not a kitchen table issue.
That's right. But guess what? 66% of American people thought it was important.
Correct.
They worry about it. They do worry about it. And I think that it's important that they know that my value set is very different than this new MAGA Republican Party. And I really did think, look, I know you're going to think I'm a little naive here after all these years, but I have great faith in the instincts of the American people. I really do. I believe ordinary people are decent and honorable. If you appeal to them, they'll do the right thing. And I think and the other thing is, Nicolle, there's a lot of good that's happening. For example, 60-some% of the American people have greater job satisfaction than they've had in the 15th or whatever the number is, 30 years. I know the polling numbers are not good, but they were the same way when I ran and won. Everybody thought I was going to get clobbered in a primary. I got 80 million votes in the last election. And with the same thing, I remember I was saying that I thought the Democratic Party was going to do extremely well in the off-year election. Yeah. And other than the Bushes, it did. I mean, it was a great in a victory by not having a significant loss. We're going to lose 40 seats and all that. I just think that it's a matter of, and this is not a criticism of press, it's an observation. There's a lot to be worried about around the world. And talking to a lot of reporters, they tell me, I'm going to be careful what I say. A number of reporters have indicated that there's no editors anymore on what they do. And I had one reporter tell me that, I'm a reporter, but I got one of my editors of the newspaper came to me and said, you don't have a brand yet. It was a major newspaper. They said, well, I'm not an editorial writer, but you need a brand so people will watch you, listen to you because of what they think you're going to say. And I just think there's a lot changing. Before, I wasn't going to run for office again. Now, for real. I know that's people wonder, but when my son had died, I was teaching at the University of Pennsylvania, and I had a significant budget to hire a lot of people for the Biden democracy out there, from Tony Blinken to others that came along. What I found was that it was awfully hard to stay silent when I saw those people coming out of the woods. I mean, literally, you never think we see people in Charlottesville, Virginia,
without the hoods,
coming out of the woods with lighted torches, carrying swastikas.
The Anti-Defamation League says that even since then, incidents of anti-Semitism are on the rise.
That's why I started a whole new initiative on anti-Semitism. But my point is that when the president, let's talk about values, when the president of the United States, when that young woman was killed, a bystander.
Heather Hoyer,
Yeah, and I talked to her mom. And he was asked, what's happened down there? He said, there are very good people on both sides.
Yeah.
Very good people on both sides.
Well, John Kelly's face told it all, right?
Oh.
His head in his hands.
Oh, but it did. But think about what that says.
Right.
About our values. Anyway.
Well, he's still the Republican standard bearer. And if you look at the line, I mean, Tim Hafey, who was a lead investigator for the congressional investigation, was also lead investigator in Charlottesville. I mean, there's a through line between the people that were animated and excited by that and the people that showed up on January 6th. And I know you view the communications around the economy and the speech yesterday as vital, making sure that all Americans know what you've done to improve the economy. But it sounds like you're going to spend equal attention communicating about the threats to democracy.
Yes, and equal attention on foreign policy. Look.
Can you tell us what you knew ahead of time would happen in Russia?
I can't tell you that ahead of time. We knew things ahead of time.
Did you worry that Trump might have tipped him off if he'd still been president?
Oh, God, I don't know. I don't think about that very often. but look, all kicking aside, from the very beginning, I made it and what you've been around presidents, working with them. I think every president is always amazed by that. Madeleine Albright was probably right, that America is the lead in the world. Without America, and so from the very beginning, from the first meeting of the G7 in England in February when I got elected, I have focused on holding NATO together, and then expanding that cadre to 40 countries, including Japan, engaged in European affairs, and helping Ukraine, in order to deal with the one thing that I was worried and always remain worried about. Putin believed he could break up the solidarity of the West. And that happens. He had a total run. So, for example, when all this was going on, I was calling meetings of the G7. I was meeting with on video and/or telephone because we couldn't get there.
COVID was still happening, right?
Well, no.
The beginning?
In the beginning.
Right.
My staff pointed out to me I've run about 180 hours with these heads of state because they look to us, and I've made it. Putin is one objective: split the West. If he did that, we were in real trouble.
Right.
We've been able to hold everything together and to help and deal with focusing on making sure that the most significant invasion since World War II does not succeed. And that's why we continue to get significant support to Ukraine. And so that's what I've spent a lot of time doing, including spending time with Zelensky late.
So when I worked for John McCain on the campaign trail, I used to sit in the back of an SUV with the three amigos, him, Lieberman, and Lindsey Graham. And we'd be heading into a really important swing state, and I'd be trying to tell him about their local sports team, and he'd be on the phone with Saakashvili. And he'd get off the phone and want to talk about, he was almost ahead of his time, right?
Well, he was. John,
what do you think he would think of his Republican Party?
I don't think he'd think much of it, and I don't know that, okay?
Yeah. No, we can't speak for him, obviously. But he was so strong in articulating what you just did, that
Look,
Putin
when I
wanted
went out to see him when he was dying at his home in Arizona, he asked me going out, he said, "Joe, would you do my eulogy?" It was one of the greatest honors that I've had. We used to, you remember, he started working with me when he came back as a prisoner of war, from being a prisoner of war. And I helped talk him into running. And I used to kid him, I said, "You've got too damn good." And we used to argue like hell, but like brothers, we'd end up hugging one another.
But that's the way politics used to be.
Yeah.
You'd fight for the cameras, and you'd.
And then you may recall, I got very upset with the last president, and even with my good friend Lindsey, sometimes, because the denial of, covering the name on the ship of John McCain. Come on. This guy was a hero. We may disagree, but he was a completely, thoroughly honorable man.
Yeah.
Oh.
The way things were. Well, Mr. President, we don't get a lot of presidents through this studio, so consider it your chair. Consider it an open invitation. There are going to be a lot of things on people's mind, and I hope you'll look at this as a place you can come and talk about anything that's on your mind.
Well, I will. We're like Porellos. We show up when we're invited. With all your food.
I say that about the show, that we're like the Hotel California. You can check out, but you can never leave. People pop up, at 4, and at 4:50 they're still here. So your staff will, and a lot of other people will come get me if I do that to you. So
it's been an honor to be with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. To be continued. We're really grateful.
This ain't your father's Republican Party.
It is not. I can attest to that.
All right. Well,
if you ever need a witness, I can attest to that. Thank you very much.
But by the way, there's still a lot of really good Republicans
out in the country.
No,
yes.
And in the Senate.
Who?
Well, I think Mitt Romney's the first guy. There's a lot of them, but not Mitt, but others have come to me since I've been elected. Now it's 6 Republican senators. 2 came at one time, and the other 4 alone, to tell me, "Joe, I agree with you, but if I'm seen to do it, I'll lose a primary." It's not a profile on courage, but I still, you know me, I'm an eternal optimist. I still think there's going to come a moment when they're going to be able to break. And by the way, remember I said we could still do bipartisan things? They said they couldn't do it. Well, we didn't get a lot, but we got a lot of bipartisan things done.
And now they're running on your bipartisan accomplishment. I think that's a sign.
Like I said, I'm going to be down there congratulating them. I said I'd be a president for every American, whether they voted for me or not.
Well, and the ones that didn't vote for your bills but run on them.
That's right.
Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate
it. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.